Chris Johnson went from Tennessee over there, and that could be interesting. I mentioned that it could help Vic. Rob, what do you got to say on this?
Yeah, this was kind of the last. This was the last big free agent running back to fall. We all kind of saw it coming. The writing was on the wall that he was going to end up at the Jets, and that's exactly where he ended up. I'm going to kind of take this debate from the perspective of, he's not going to do so well. So, Chris Johnson, he's 29 years old. He's coming off of being 6 years in the NFL, almost 1,800 carries. He's definitely on the downside of his career. I don't think there's any question about that. On top of that, he's coming off knee surgery this past offseason to repair a meniscus in his knee. There are reports all around that he's got, possible arthritis in that knee, but, what NFL player doesn't have arthritis somewhere after, 6 years in the NFL? So I think the biggest thing for me here is that I think people lose perspective on the Jets and what they're all about. I mean, everyone thinks of Jets, they think of Rex Ryan, they think of a run first, pound the ball down the field, win the game with our defense sort of team. But last year, actually, in 2013, all the Jets running backs, so Chris Ivory and Belial and those guys, they only accounted for 38% of the overall offense for the Jets. Marty Morningwood came in. He's going into his third season there of offensive coordinator for the Jets, and he likes to throw the ball. I mean, they threw the ball 65% of their offensive snaps last season. I mean, that's something that a lot of people aren't aware of. So he's not going into a situation where they're just going to run like we're used to seeing, 2+ years ago from the Jets. So, some of the Jets beat writers are kind of estimating that, he might get 10 to 12 carries a game. It's hard to say this early on, obviously, before preseason. But you got to remember, CJ2K was getting, 17 to 20 touches a game, carries a game, and so forth his last 5 seasons in Tennessee. So this guy needs volume to get the job done. Another red flag for Chris Johnson is the Jets offensive line ranked 26th last year in the NFL. I mean, that's just horrible. They were actually 3rd the year before, so they just went downhill big time. So he's a guy who's incredibly inconsistent for fantasy. Someone who at the end of the season, because he's so healthy and can play 16 games, he ends up putting up 1,000 rushing yards. But he does it in such an inconsistent way. It's just hard to rely on this guy for anything more than a flex position. So I think you draft him as such, and you just hope that the weeks that you have to play him because you have some bye week problem or issue, that he spouts off one of his better weeks for you. Jim, any thoughts on Chris Johnson?
I think it's like Barack Obama said, it's time for a change. He needed to get it out of Tennessee as quickly as possible. I mean, things just weren't kind of lining up there. But, let's look at this from a different way. Yeah, he's extremely inconsistent, but the man, when was the last time he missed a game? 4 years ago? He's missed 2 in the last 6. The guy is a rock of actually stability. Even though he might be inconsistent from game to game, he's still going to get you 1,000 yards every season, which that's kind of cool. So let's think about this. Could he thrive as a change of speed back? I don't know. I really don't have that answer. But here's something that is interesting. The fastest combine 40-yard dash of all time was guess who? And this is important because it's not. It was CJ2K. Chris Johnson.
6 years ago.
Yeah, well.
6 years ago.
A lot of things happened 6 years ago we all regret. Anyways, all advanced metrics definitely do hate him. He has something to prove, and I think that's where this is going to be kind of one of those make-or-break years for him, where, hey, he might have something there. By the way, the offensive line going from 3rd to 26, Chris Ivory was carrying the ball. That automatically deducts like 15 points from him. So just saying, just going to let that go there. By the way, if shit hits a fan, you're in New York, bro. Chris Johnson, you could always draft for the Mets because they're still, wait, never mind. Don't try for the Mets. That's a terrible idea. Anyways, Jay?
Again, he's no Bo Jackson.
Yeah, exactly.
Boom!
Yeah, I think Chris Johnson, I mean, the more people watch this show, the more they're going to find out. I have, we'll put it nicely, I have a great disdain for the Jets. I think they're a mess. Until they get rid of Rex Ryan, they're just going to be crap. So I think if you're going to draft Chris Johnson, you draft him as a flex play, and you hope and pray to the fantasy football gods that this guy actually works out. I mean, anybody on the Jets at this point is a scary, scary prospect.
On our next show, we're going to be breaking down and tiering the top 20 fantasy running backs for 2014 and comparing our rankings and tiers to the current ADP from Fantasy Football Calculator. So tune in next 2 weeks from now to see how we match up with their numbers. We'll also be sharing our thoughts on the first round of the NFL draft. So, does Johnny Manziel go to the Browns? Does Clowney end up going over, number 1 to the Texans? Tune in to find out in the fantasy scenarios from which they find themselves on those teams, the ramifications. We're going to be live every 2 weeks here in the off season moving forward. We're going to go back to once a week here as the season gets closer. So tune in on Friday, May 9th. For our next live hangout. In the meantime, check out our previous shows on our YouTube channel, Red Zone Warriors Fantasy Football Show. Like us on Facebook at Red Zone Warriors Fantasy Football Show, and follow and tweet us your fantasy football questions on Twitter at Red Zone Warriors. So for the Cushman, the Jimmer, I am Rob Shiva Winter Smith. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we will see you next time. Peace.
I gotta go tinkle.